Welcome to NDTR Spotlight, the corner of the internet, or NDTR Shine. I'm your host, Marie Lorraine. Today we have Ivan with us, and he is a director of dietary, specialty in food service, but has an awesome story leading up to that. He started off as a chef and has made his way all the way to being a director of dietary in a long-term care facility. And he is here. He actually reached out to the podcast to share his story, because he wants to share the inside scoops of what it's like working in food service and share some things that you might not expect someone who was working in food service to do and achieve. He has his Bachelor's of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics, and he's currently pursuing an MBA. So let us meet our guest today. Thank you so much for coming on and spending your Saturday with us.
Thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure being here. I've been watching a lot of your videos, and it's really great. I really appreciate how you exposing the credential out there, because not a lot of people think it's worth it, but I think it's, there's a lot of value to it.
Yes, I agree. And I appreciate when NDTRs reach out to me and want to share. And just looking at your LinkedIn and what you've done, I'm very excited to dive into this. So starting off as a chef, and then you found the NDTR credential. What made you pursue the NDTR after being a chef?
Well, I was working in restaurants and, hotels and that sort of thing. And it just like really fast paced. And, that's also the quality of life. I didn't have any weekends free. I was always working, but I really liked food service. I really enjoyed it. So, I remember from culinary school, one of the classes I really enjoyed was nutrition. So I looked into it and see, what is out there that I can do with my current degree, maybe expand upon it. And, I found a bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics, and that's what I pursued. I think it goes really well with my background, because not a lot of NDTRs or even dietitians know much about food service, or even how to cook per se, other than at home, in high quality, high quantities and high quality food is very important to me. So I just think it's very important to, be the one out there putting out the menus and, just listening to the feedback from the residents and from the people that are the ones eating the food. So like you said, I started working as I started as a cook, then I worked my way up. I became a sous chef, and then ultimately I was a chef in several restaurants and resorts. And like I said, it's just working every single weekend, and that got a little tiring after a while. I ultimately want to become a dietitian. However, it's taking me a little longer than expected. I thought I was going to meet the mark of before the 2023, do my internship, but that didn't happen. So I figured, might as well go into my master's, and I already got matched to an internship. However, they're all distance, and they're going to give me credit for my food service part, and also for my clinical part of it, because one thing that is really shocking to a lot of you is just like food service is not just food service. As a director of dietary, I also oversee the quality of care, making sure that looking at weight loss reports. I do MDS, I do quarterlies. The only assessments that I don't do is the initials and the annuals, but everything else I do. We do have a dietitian, but she's there part-time. She's only there twice a week, and we work really well together. I do learn a lot from her, and she does learn a lot from me as well. So I think we do pretty good.
So it sounds like I don't know how you manage both. So we'll talk about how you do some of the clinical stuff as well as the food stuff, as plus the menu stuff, because you're the director of dietary at a long-term care facility. So that's a lot involved in that. But I want to let's go back a little bit because your perspective is so refreshing. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to someone in the field of dietetics, the NDTR or dietitian, who has such rich experience working as a chef, as a sous chef, as a cook, because you see the back end of the kitchen, you see all that production stuff, and then to take those skills and then add that nutrition component to it, I feel like your knowledge is just so advanced compared to what is taught us in the school for dietetics and for NDTRs. So when you were doing that transitioning from the cook into doing more nutrition and then bringing that food service, getting into food service, how did you find? Did you find that there was an easy, or did you find that you were able to bring in new ideas into the kitchen from your experience as a cook, combining it with the NDTR credential?
Oh, definitely. Oh, most definitely. Like, I do also hold my the CDM, which is a certified dietary manager. So I think it's the easiest part for me was like, understanding food, how to cook food, how to keep it at the right temperature, safe. But not also just safe, because a lot of people just focus on like, having hot food and that's it. There's more to it. It's like you got to cook quality food, Most long-term care facilities, including hospitals, institutionalized kitchens, they use a lot of frozen vegetables, and the quality of the vegetables is not great. I'm really, really lucky where I work. I can actually, I'm really, really lucky that I get to choose what ingredients I buy. So I try to go for like fresh, local ingredients, locally sourced. So that really changes the texture and the quality of the food, and it reflects on the residents. They enjoy the food, therefore they're eating it. So there's less supplements, there's like less weight loss. And
Wow, food is really the medicine there because you were actually like prescribing the right stuff with the menus and stuff. And that, I mean, that is a huge barrier in dietetics is dietitians and NDTRs, when we go and talk to our patients, they're like, well, the vegetables stuck here. I don't like the way they taste. But it
yeah,
sounds like you are really working hard to navigate that. So for the NDTR audience that is listening and who want NDTRs who want to be in food service, that is the dream, to be able to, choose produce that is, tasting better and cook it better. How do you navigate that, the prices and the teaching the cooks how to cook it correctly to make sure that is transitioned to the patient?
well, I do a lot of in services with the cooks, and also I'm really hands-on. So unless I'm doing any clinical or ordering or any audits, I'm typically in the kitchen watching the food as it's being made. I'm the first person to try the food before it goes out. So I really try to be back there and not just sit behind a desk, look pretty, but I really want to be out there, like, making sure that cooks are following my orders and doing things the right way, not just taking shortcuts or just doing what's, most convenient for them, because a lot of the times they tend to become complacent. And it's unfortunate, like working in restaurants, that high-end restaurants, that cooks are very, very passionate about what they're serving. And I just wish that there was more passion in the food service, and whether it's long-term or whether it's hospitals, but, they just, it's kind of like a check mark, like, oh, I did this, food is out, check. But, really have to be focused on the quality, because the quality, not just the temperature, because they emphasize a lot of that temperature. Yes, it needs to be hot. It needs to be held at the right temperature, but it also has to be tasty. And it has to be a menu that the residents or the patients can identify with. Something that is culturally appropriate for them.
Yes. So I hear in services, I hear you taste the food, you're in the kitchen and you're training the cooks appropriately. And it sounds like you're bringing passion into that kitchen. When you stepped into the job, because in my experience, and you kind of alluded to it too, there's not a lot of passion and really care, I would say, in the food service world, because it's just kind of checking the boxes, making sure the temperature's right. So when you stepped into that role, was it hard to transition and really kind of set that standard of what food is going to be like in this new place?
Um, yes, there was a lot of pushback at first, because a lot of the cooks were like, well, this is how we've been doing it. This is the way it's always been done. And especially the ones that have been there like, 5, 6, 7, 10 years or even longer. They're already used to, like, putting out whatever, they're not really worried about the quality of the food or the taste per se. They just check the boxes, like you said. And it's just really pushing the line and making sure that they're actually doing what I asked for them to do, and holding them accountable, whether it's, having coaching sessions or even corrective actions. I'm big on, coaching, but, if I coach you once, twice, three times, and at some point I have to hold you accountable, whether it's like I said, a verbal write-up or, an actual write-up itself. So, and manage, and that's how it is in management. You really have to be firm for them to like take your lead, like understand that like you mean business, you want the food to taste good, to always look presentable. Gardens are number one, just not just like, like, okay, this is mechanical, this is that, and that's it, just basic. And I'm very, very thankful that I have a really big budget at the facility. Is typically the PPD for any food service establishment is around $6 to $7. Mine is close to $10. It's $9.75. So with that being said, I can actually buy, locally grown produce, like I mentioned. I can buy fresh grown fruits and fresh vegetables. So that facility that I work at is very, very unique in that sense. They do put a lot of money into the food program.
Yeah, it's great that they have you, someone who's passionate and is going to take advantage of that increased budget and use it correctly to really provide the patients with proper nutrition. You do the coaching, and you're working with the food service workers with your management style and this high standard. Do you see now that the people working for you have pride in their work? Do they realize the importance of what they're doing with you, kind of coaching and being really involved in what you're serving to the patients there?
Definitely. I think the culture has really changed. A lot of people really take pride in their food. And we also get a lot of feedback from the residents. They're saying, the food is amazing. And it's not always, good feedback that you get. Sometimes you get, I didn't like this. This wasn't up to my standards. And we try to learn from both, from the good feedback and from the negative feedback. And so it's just listening to what the residents have to say in the food committees. And whenever I go out in the dining rooms, talk to them and ask them how was the food, are you want a second plate or anything like that. It's really rewarding in that sense that I get to see them enjoy the food, that is given the proper nutrition for them to get better, because we not only have long-term care, but we also have rehab as well.
Nice. So you get to see the transition of people getting better with rehab, which is nice, because sometimes long-term care is like you don't see that.
Correct.
So with your feedback, do you have a process, or is it just what you would describe, or you're just going and building relationships and building rapport with the patients at the facility? Or is there a more concrete way of getting feedback for the food that you serve?
Well, that's more informal, but there is also like forms that I have to do. I go in, once or 3 times a month, and I, sit down with residents, fill out some forms, ask them, how was the food? How was this? And also during the food committees is when we get a lot of feedback from everyone, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, what we can improve, how we can do better. We also get I try to do once a week a resident meal choice. We're like, what, we haven't had this in a long time. We want this, or we've all been craving for shrimp, or we've been craving for this. And I make it happen for them. Whatever it is that they want to eat for that specific day.
What is the feedback? What are they saying to you? What are some of the things you've heard?
At first, there was a lot of negative feedback, honestly, and there was a lot of complaints. There was a lot of complaints. I had a lot to work at that facility. There was a lot of work to be done. The menus weren't even correctly. They weren't signed by the dietitians. There was no recipe books. It was just basically the Wild West when it got there. I strained first. It was basically the Wild West. There was no structure in place. And, there was also, they also didn't even have the therapeutic spreadsheets, to know what resident, each different diet is supposed to have. So they were just going by, whatever they thought it was appropriate.
Oh, then, so did you start with a big budget?
No, I started with the big budget. They've always had the budget, um, and it's just, I guess they weren't taking advantage of it. Like I said, there was nobody really seemed to care. Like they had 2, 3 different managers prior to me, and they were just coming and going. A lot of them, they were just barely putting the hours. I mean, the first 2 months, I was probably putting in like 50, 60 hours. And I mean, I'm salary, so but for me, it was more like, what? I want to get things right. I want to be ready for a survey whenever they come in. I don't have to panic. So let me get everything straight. And then I start focusing on the second phase, which was improving the quality of the food, bringing the right tools for, to make the job easier or, more smooth, rearranging the kitchen, and starting setting standards of like what is expected, doing like different cleaning assignments, and that, it's been improving. We haven't had any grievance related to food in like 4 months, and I've been there 6 months.
Oh, but you've done all of this in 6 months?
Yeah.
That is impressive. I could just tell your passion just from the way you're talking about what you do. And so, okay, so you had to go in there, you had to establish yourself, you had to clean up the mess that was left for you, and then you started your attention on the menu and setting up the standards of quality for the food that you're serving. So for our NDTR audience listening, what was that process of working with the menu and the food that you were serving, or that you began to serve the patients there?
Well, the menu, there's a lot of programs out there. We do have a program that we pay for, and it was really simple, easy to navigate it. Like you don't have to like break down the menu to like get all the different micronutrients and all the different stuff. It's all computerized, so that helps a lot. So whenever I print any, nutrient analysis, it's easy, and so it's not so much, work in that sense. Like when you're in school, you have to like break down the recipes, break this down, and calculate all these nutrients. It's good to know how to do it, but you don't have to do it. It's already done in the computer, and it breaks down all the different dynamics for you.
So you have finished, you worked on the menu, you kind of set your standards with the kitchen and what you expected. And you mentioned that food service is you're just not doing the menus, you're just not doing the cooking, but you're also doing, it sounds like, some clinical work as the director. So what is the clinical aspects of your jobs?
I do quarterly assessments. I do the mini clinical assessments. I also do the MDS. And honestly, they were at first a little challenging. I guess I was a little rusty with my clinical part, but the more I do them, the faster I get at them, and I start, just becomes easier. Quarterly assessment is every 3 months for the long-term care residents. We have to do a complete assessment of the residents. Look at their weights. If there's any weight loss, any weight changes. Look at the vitals, any of the markers. And based on that, we got to do a plan of care. Like, okay, what are we going to do if this person keeps losing weight? Let's put them on fortified foods, like, throw in some supplements. Or, this person has already regained the weight, so there's no need for having them on fortified foods. Let's change this, let's change that. And, that's how you start changing all those different things. You look at the resident is every 3 months, but then also annually we do that as well.
That must be, you said it was a little rusty with the clinical, but it's so nice that, because you know everything that's going on in the kitchen. So like if you implement a supplement for that patient, you know exactly what's in the, like, that NDTRs, you're supposed to know that already, but you're ordering the food. So that must be just a whole new realm of quality and expertise that you're bringing to those quarterly assessments that you're doing. So you said it was a little rusty. So how are you working on improving those clinical skills?
I just went back to my notes and I started reading them and started going back to that and referring to the notes. I don't need to do that as much now. I think I got it pretty much down at this point. I think I've been doing it for long enough that I don't need to go back and look at that. But it was a good reference. So if you're still in school, keep your notes. You might need them later on.
Yeah, keep the notes around because you never know what aspects of nutrition you're going to do. Even if you're doing a job that's just food service, it sounds like clinical. And that's not even just a little bit of clinical. That's what I've spoken to NDTRs who work on long-term care, and that's just what they do. They do those quarterly assessments. They have their own patients, and you're doing both. So how does that add to your job, being able to, I don't know if you've had other jobs in food service, but what perspectives does that bring doing the food service and the clinical for?
I think I see not just the clinical part, but I also see how the food service component actually interacts with, the quality of the food. It really affects how much the resident eats, but also like making sure that the residents are, we're abiding to their diet restrictions, or like, they're getting the supplement that they're supposed to be getting, that they're actually eating the food. The food is actually being fortified and not just like, saying that it's fortified, but it's not. So like, and I also really enjoy going to the care plan meetings. I hear the feedback from the residents and family, what is it that they don't like about the food? If there's any concerns about dietary, any allergies that we don't know, or any concerns that we need to address. And another, it's not really assessments, but I also do the diet history and also diet preferences. So in the diet history, I ask them like, what do you typically eat on, and based on that, I put on the ticket system, like, hey, this person likes coffee, so let's send them coffee for breakfast. They like orange juice, they like cranberry juice. Instead of just being really generic, you're getting this juice, even if you don't like it, you're getting this. So I try to tailor their, or cater to their needs and their likes and dislikes and really honor them. I mean, I'm not perfect and the team is not perfect. There's always room for improvement. But as long as we're having those things in place and we're striving for perfection, I think we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail too. I think that's a part of health that is really unique to nutrition, and what NDTRs can bring to the table is just like honoring those food preferences of the patients that we serve, because that makes a huge difference when they're able to have something that they enjoy, that some type of normalcy when they're dealing with a sickness or they're dealing with aging. Having that familiarity is so important. Having someone who cares about, like, oh, you want coffee in the morning, let's get you coffee. That improves just the quality of life, which does a lot to just encourage them to enjoy what they can do, no matter what sickness they currently have. So that's great. So then my question for you, it's so great that you have that such a unique perspective, and it sounds like what you do is, if I could use the term, like holistic nutrition, in a sense where you just like are really, everything, all of the food, and you're doing the new assessments. I wish all nutrition could be like that. Obviously, that's very hard to do. So you have a very unique job that I think is just going to, that we can learn a lot from. And I will say, if you do the internship, I think you'll be fine because you're set with food service. The clinical, like, I feel like you're going to thrive if you decide to get the RD and credential. But it sounds like you're doing so much. And if I could say so much more than what I know some dietitians are doing as an NDTR, so it blows my mind. You're definitely an NDTR doing things outside of the box and bringing in such wonderful expertise from other areas. So that's awesome. So you are like a great example of someone working in food service and making a huge difference in the care of patients in long-term care. So what would you say to an NDTR listening who wants to pursue food service, who's thinking about pursuing food service? What would you say to them if they don't have necessarily the experience of working in the kitchen and being a chef and having that background experience?
I would say at least try to be a diet tech. diet technician or like diet aid. I mean, they call them differently in different places. It was basically a train line worker, and at least you understand, like, because I did that too. I did work at some hospitals as a diet aid, and then I became a supervisor. I've also worked as a manager in hospitals as well. And even if you don't really get to cook the food, but you understand the process of like how the tickets are being sent, all the different diets. What's a clear liquid diet? What's a full liquid diet? What's a renal? What's a carb control? Or in long-term care, they don't really call it carb control because it's more liberalized. So all the diets are more liberalized because it's supposed to mimic what residents would do at home and not so restrictive as to like encourage them to eat. So we have RCS, which is not to be confused with like carb control. It's more liberal. They actually get to have more sweets, but in moderation. Moderation is key. And liberal renal, which is not so restrictive. They're able to have different foods in moderation. Obviously, we limit potassium from bananas, potatoes, and citrus, tomatoes as well. But everything else is it's okay as long as their labs are okay.
That's great. That's a great mindset and great kind of advice for them, because I find that working as an NDTR, you're expected to know like what's in the food, like what's being served, and really how to your interventions are nutrition. Your interventions is food, so you really have to understand what the facility that you're working at is serving these patients. And so taking the time and taking it time and being really intentional about time, being a diet aid and working in these lower positions, but really taking that time to really learn and grow. And that is really going to, it sounds like, really affect your career and set you up to provide the best nutrition interventions for the people you serve, because that's what I see with what you're doing. You have all of that knowledge and it's really impacting your current position.
Definitely. And it may not be being a diet aid may not be the most glamorous position, but you at least making an impact. You're making an impact. You're learning all the diets. You're learning how a kitchen runs, how it operates. And I think it's really important because, you might do your assessments correctly 100%. All the interventions are there. But if the kitchen is not able to follow your orders, then all the work you did is, pointless.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I couldn't agree with you more. I work there's a kitchen where I work in a prison, but we had a situation where someone was on a gluten-free diet. Someone didn't follow the recipe that was the standard recipe, and they put gluten in a salsa. And that's like a complete disaster for patients. So everything you're saying is that's a small example of how that connection, if that connection is broken, how it really can hurt a patient.
The quality of care, definitely.
So very well said.
Correct. Yeah, and being a train line worker, a kitchen worker, however you might want to call it, you definitely like the person that was like responsible for putting what goes on each tray, like really following the orders and the diets. And so I don't think there's such a thing as like a low position. I think everyone has just different roles and the care that the residents get or patients receive, for that matter.
Your current job sounds amazing. It sounds like you have lots of say and you're really making a big impact. But what is your future goals? What are your future thoughts on what you want to do with your career? I know you're pursuing your MBA. You mentioned the RDN credential. What is the plans for you currently?
I think I'm gonna stay in the food service. I really loved having control. I'm not a control freak, but I really enjoy having a say when it comes down to like the quality, making all those different changes. And so that's something that I really enjoy, and I don't think I could walk away from. Like, whether it's like, buying from a different food purveyor, that has better quality of food, or whether it's, trying different products. So that is something that I really enjoy. I do want to, like I said, do my internship and ultimately become a dietitian. But like I said, I'm going to stay in the food service for that reason. And secondly is because unfortunately food service directors do earn more than dietitians, just clinical dietitians. And for me, it's not just about the money, but it is a pretty good incentive as well. That there's more higher earning potential as a food service director.
So then let me ask you this. This is probably a tricky question, but since you're in food service, what are the benefits of going from an NDTR to a dietitian that you have seen that's kind of pushing you to still consider that credential?
Really not a whole lot. I mean, I really don't even need it. It's just for me to like, you know what? I ran the race, might as well just finish it, It's just part of, basically, I don't like leaving things unfinished.
Yeah.
So that's honestly the only reason why I want to get it done.
Just finish the race. That makes sense. I can respect that for sure. So, so as you're probably aware, dietetics it's slowly becoming more diverse, I believe, with the NDTR credential and avenues to make it more accessible to become a dietitian or an NDTR. But men are also there's not many men in dietetics. So what has been your experience being a male in the field of dietetics and specifically in NDTR?
I would say like, I mean, I didn't really feel some type of way. I don't think I ever felt like there was competition. I mean, for the most part, like most of the girls in my class were very friendly, very eager to learn, and like, or we would get together but yeah, there is definitely like men are the minority in this career, and I think it's slowly starting to change. More men are getting into it, but the majority going into management rather than the clinical. However, I mean, I think soon enough, in the near future, we'll see that change.
Awesome. So what advice, and you already kind of gave great advice to the NDTR audience, but I want to open up the rest of this spotlight for you. Anything you want to add, anything I didn't ask, anything you want to put out there for future, former, or current NDTRs?
I would say every single class that you take in school is very important, whether it's management, because you do learn a lot from those courses, management 1 and management 2, from the food service class, food science courses. So many students only focus on, clinical aspect of it, but there's more to it, especially like, if you want to become a, food service director or director of dietary, and, just keep your mind open, your options open, and see where you end up, if you want to just stick with clinical, or you might want to go into food service or other options out there.
That's awesome. That's great advice. I love just absorb everything and be open-minded. So is there any way that people can reach out to you if they have further questions or just want to connect with an NDTR who's doing really impressive things in the field of dietetics?
Yes, they can reach out to me. I'm available on LinkedIn. You can share my link so they can add me, and then if they have any questions, I can I'll be more than glad to like answer any questions and help them out. Also, if they're planning to do their internship, because like I said, I got approved for 2 internship. I got matched, and I didn't even go through the whole DICAS process. So a lot of people think it's just, oh, you got to follow this and this is the only way. No, like I would just reach out to the directors and then send my resume. Look, this is it. And they were like, oh, wow, yeah, we'll take you in. And then I have to like spend money, spend hours writing a fancy, statement, whatever it's called. So it was, you just got to think outside the box, be more creative. Everybody's doing the same thing. So don't follow everybody. There's other ways that you can get matched without even having to go through the whole DICAS process.
Yes. And if you're an NDTR, I feel like you're already thinking outside the box. Every NDTR I've spoken to, they just blow my mind. Definitely. So that's a very easy thing for this audience to do, to think outside the box and really pursue your goals and aspirations and make differences in patients' lives. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge. If you enjoyed this podcast, please comment down below. Share if you're interested in food service. We'd love to hear a little bit about that. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave a review. Make sure you subscribe. And like always, we'll see you in another Spotlight.